At 9:17 p.m., an entire street went dark, a blackout lasting only 7 minutes. When the lights returned, 2 unrelated people were found dead. In the coastal tech hub of Vane City, the evening of February 11, 2026, began with the usual electric hum. Vane City is a place that never truly sleeps. It is a grid of high-speed fiber optics, neon signs, and millions of people living their lives through a screen. For most residents, the evening is a time to retreat into the digital world. It is a time for live streams, social media, and the predictable comfort of a routine. But at 8:14 p.m., that comfort was surgically removed. Without a single flicker of warning, the power grid across the entire central district collapsed. This was not a slow brownout caused by a storm. It was an absolute erasure of light. Streetlights died mid-glow, internet routers went dark, and the constant white noise of a modern city, the hum of the electrical grid, was replaced by an absolute, heavy stillness. The blackout lasted exactly 7 minutes. In the grand scale of a human life, 7 minutes is a minor delay. It is just enough time to find a flashlight or wait for a phone to reboot. But when the lights surged back at 8:21 p.m., the world had fundamentally shifted. 2 famous public creators, separated by miles of urban sprawl and secure building entryways, were found dead in their homes. There were no witnesses, no screams captured on microphones, and no footprints left behind. The blackout lasted 7 minutes. The silence lasted forever. To understand the weight of this tragedy, we must first look at the lives of the victims. Jonah Merrick was a 32-year-old gaming personality who had built a massive following based on transparency. He was known as the elder brother of the internet. His audience knew the layout of his studio, his favorite snacks, and the specific way his voice would drop when a game story became emotional. He spent 6 nights a week in front of 3 glowing monitors, turning his own time and attention into a digital sanctuary for 500,000 people. Across the city, in a refurbished loft downtown, Lena Ardent, age 29, operated in a different sphere. She was a mirror creator. She watched documentaries and news clips, sharing her feelings and thoughts with her audience. Her loft was a sanctuary of soft fairy lights, mahogany shelves, and warm textiles. Lena was vibrant and expressive. Both Jonah and Lena were masters of the parasocial relationship. This is a bond where a fan feels like a close personal friend, even though the creator has never actually met them. To their fans, Jonah and Lena were family. On the night of the blackout, both creators were following their strict schedules. Jonah was 2 hours into a charity marathon stream, laughing with his viewers as he navigated a colorful digital world. Lena was in the middle of recording a deep dive into an old cold case file. Their lives were defined by these schedules and the rhythm of the upload. There was no public link between them. They didn't work together and they weren't friends in real life. However, the first contradiction in the case emerged almost as soon as the police arrived. The medical examiner noted that the time of death for both victims occurred within that narrow 7-minute window of darkness. Jonah's high-rise and Lena's loft were 2 miles apart. Even with a fast car and no traffic, the drive between the 2 locations took at least 12 minutes. The math simply did not work. Their deaths happened in a window of time too small to be a coincidence, yet too far apart to be the work of a single intruder. As detectives moved through the crime scenes, the sense of impossibility only grew. The violation of these homes was chillingly clean. In Jonah's high-rise, there were no signs of forced entry. The heavy steel door was electronically locked from the inside. Nothing was taken. His expensive equipment, his wallet, and his collection of rare watches remained exactly where they belonged. There was no sign of a struggle, no tipped-over chairs, and no broken glass. Jonah was found sitting upright in his ergonomic chair. It looked as if he had simply stopped moving mid-sentence. At Lena's loft, the scene was exactly the same. She was slumped over her desk, her hand still resting near her mouse. Because her camera was equipped with a battery backup, it had continued to record during the blackout. The footage revealed 7 minutes of absolute, pitch-black darkness. There were no sounds of footsteps, no doors opening, and no breathing. The killer was like a ghost, moving with a precision that suggested they knew the architecture of the rooms by heart. Initial police theories followed the most obvious path. In cases involving public figures, the first instinct is to look for the superfan, the obsessive stalker. They searched for angry followers or people who had been banned from their chat rooms. They spent weeks looking at the haters, the people who leave mean comments or try to start drama online. But the theory quickly fell apart. A typical stalker is loud. They want credit for their actions. In this case, there was only a void. There was no public claim of responsibility and no manifesto posted online. This wasn't about money or rage. Rage is messy. This was something different. It felt respectful, like an administrative task being carried out with quiet resolve. Detectives began to realize that the lack of evidence was evidence itself. If a killer can walk into a high-security building in total darkness and leave without making a sound, they aren't lucky, they are prepared. They began to look at the digital footprints of everyone who had ever interacted with Jonah and Lena. They weren't looking for threats. They were looking for something much rarer: perfect attendance. They were looking for the people who never missed a stream, never missed a post, and never stopped watching. The breakthrough came when a junior analyst in the cybercrimes unit looked past the threats and started looking at the persistence. Buried under millions of comments, they identified 2 accounts: Static Seeker and Quiet Observer. These accounts never posted hate or profanity. Instead, for 5 years, they posted daily messages that were unsettling in their banality. They would say things like, "I saw you were a little quiet today. I hope you're okay." Or, "That new lamp in your background is a nice touch." Then the messages changed. For the last 6 months, they asked the same question every single day: "Why won't you acknowledge me?" It wasn't the screaming of a hater. It was the soft, rhythmic tapping of a finger on glass. The motive began to shift from the physical to the psychological. It wasn't anger. It was a desperate, pathological need for attention. The killers didn't want to destroy the creators out of hate. They wanted to own the story of their existence. While the cybercrimes unit was digging through the internet, the physical investigation took a technical turn. Vane City Power and Light finished its internal audit of the blackout. The outage was not an accident. Someone had accessed a secure substation using a physical maintenance key and a valid, high-level override code. This caused what engineers call a cascade effect. By flipping one specific switch, the intruder forced the local grid to shut down all traffic lights, hospital backup tests, and residential streetlights in a 2-mile radius. This wasn't a fluke. It was a bespoke suit of darkness, tailored specifically for those 7 minutes. Someone had walked into a high-security building, turned off the world, and walked out. Now, it was no longer a coincidence, it was a design. The detectives returned to the map of Vane City. They looked at the 3 points: Jonah's apartment, Lena's loft, and the power substation. To pull this off, a person would have to kill the power, travel 4 miles to Jonah's, kill Jonah, travel 2 miles to Lena's, kill Lena, and then return to the substation. All in 7 minutes, through pitch-black streets. It was impossible for one person. This realization changed the entire case. They weren't looking for a lone wolf. They were looking for a partnership. When the cybercrimes unit re-examined the anonymous accounts, they found the gut punch evidence. Under linguistic analysis, the 2 accounts showed subtle shifts. Static Seeker used technical, precise language. Quiet Observer was more emotional and focused on the victim's vulnerability. They were acting in perfect synchronicity, posting at the same time and referencing each other's comments. It wasn't a single obsessed fan. It was a shared delusion. The descent into the final layer of the mystery led the police to a modest, 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood called Willow Creek. This was the home of Arthur and Claire Pendergast. Arthur was a 45-year-old technician for the utility company. He was the one with the key. Claire, 42, was a senior administrator at a local healthcare facility. They were the invisibles. They were the people you pass in the grocery store and forget before you even reach your car. They had no criminal records and no history of violence. Neighbors described them as the perfect couple. They were never loud, they never fought, and they always kept their lawn perfectly mowed. But inside their home, the real horror was revealed. They weren't monsters in the way we see them in movies. They were a middle-aged couple who had allowed the boundary between the digital and physical worlds to erode completely. Arthur's workstation was filled with thousands of hours of Jonah's archived streams. Claire's computer was open to Lena's videos. They had replaced their own marriage with the lives of these creators. In the interrogation room, they were eerily calm. They didn't want fame, they wanted acknowledgement. They felt the creators owed them a piece of their lives because of the years the Pendergasts had spent watching them. But the most chilling detail was the why. Investigators found 2 single interactions from 3 years ago. Jonah had once replied to Static Seeker during a charity stream, saying, "I see you, Static. You're not alone." Lena had once told Quiet Observer, "I recognize your name every time you post. Thanks for being here." To a healthy person, a reply from a creator is a nice moment. To Arthur and Claire, it was a blood oath. They felt they had finally become real because they were seen. But as the creators grew more famous, the replies stopped. The communities became too large. To the Pendergasts, this wasn't just being ignored. It was a betrayal. It was being unexisted. They felt that if they couldn't be part of the creators' lives, they would be the last thing the creators ever saw. They used the darkness to slip into the homes they had memorized from years of watching videos. They didn't need light because they already knew where every piece of furniture was. During the trial, the prosecution presented a reconstructed timeline. Arthur had driven to the substation at 8 p.m. He turned off the lights at 8:14 p.m. Meanwhile, Claire was already standing in the stairwell of Jonah's building, waiting in the dark. As soon as the power cut, she used her administrative keycard, which she had stolen from the hospital that shared a security system with Jonah's building, to enter. She finished her task in 3 minutes. At the same time, Arthur had used his utility vehicle to speed through the dark streets to Lena's loft. Because he was an official utility worker, even if a police officer had seen him, they would have assumed he was there to fix the power. He entered Lena's home, finished his task, and was back at the substation to let the timer restore the power by 8:21 p.m. They were back in their living room by 8:30 p.m., sitting together in the light as if nothing had happened. Arthur and Claire Pendergast were sentenced to life in prison without parole. The trial was a media circus, but the horror didn't lie in the details of the crime. It lay in the mirror it held up to the rest of us. The city eventually moved on, but the fear stayed. Now, whenever the lights flicker in Vane City, people don't look at their fuses. They look at their phones. They look at the strangers standing next to them. We live in an age where attention is a currency, and for some, it is as vital as oxygen. The Pendergasts proved that the most ordinary people can harbor the darkest obsessions. This case changed how Vane City looks at its public figures. Private security for creators has become a billion-dollar industry. The buildings are more secure, the digital filters are stronger, and the distance between the fan and the creator has grown wider. But the central problem remains. We broadcast our lives to millions of people, inviting them into our homes every single day. We forget that among those millions are people who don't see us as entertainment. They see us as the only thing making their lives worth living. The blackout lasted 7 minutes, but the obsession lasted years. And the killers were hiding in plain sight, inside the ordinary. The digital world feels safe until the lights go out. If you found this case as unsettling as we did, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the hidden motives. We explore the patterns and the shadows that others choose to ignore. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, not everyone watching is just a fan. Good night.